Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another in our Elephant We Don't See Diversity Dialogue event with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. I am Kyla Hanington. I'm the Public Engagement and Outreach Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights. And in this series, Michelle Hamiel, who's the Chief Operating Officer for Programming from the library, and I read books about equity, bias, discrimination, and more. And then we talk about what we learned, what we wish we had learned, and how such reading can help us do better in the world. We are thrilled to be joined tonight by a special guest, my colleague, Jose Villegas, who's a senior investigator with the Office of Human Rights. We're actually waiting for Michelle. She's having a few technical problems, but I expect her to pop up at any moment. Tonight, we are discussing the book, The Lighthouse Effect, How Ordinary People Can Have an Extraordinary Impact in the World by Steve Pemberton. And it's a timely look at how all of us can make a difference in our own individual lives. If you remember, throughout this series, we've been tackling really tough issues, tough questions. And this book, in many ways, serves as a way to put that learning into practice. So I'm super excited that you could join us tonight. And Jose, a particular thanks to you as being our very special guest. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Kyla, for the invitation, and I'm happy to be with you and hopefully Michelle when she joins.
Do you want to start us off? Maybe just introduce. I know that for viewers, not everyone's had a chance to read this yet. Can you just maybe provide a little bit of an introduction to the book for us?
To me, is I think you just mentioned it. It's just him discussing certain, people that provide a certain impact to others in society, and even in his own personal life, which I thought it was really, honestly, a really good book because initially when I was just uh, starting to read it, or when I downloaded it, I saw the lighthouse, the picture, and I was thinking, well, I wonder what this book is about, and so when I started reading it, it was provided very good insights on the identification of what certain people might do to others. The impact that people could have in other people by not knowing. One of the examples that he provided, or one of the examples, that he provided, is that this person that was giving him books, and that it was at some point it's like she didn't know that that what she was doing was having a impact on him and the information that she was providing. So I thought it was really good just seeing that and having that type of connection with your personal life of how people has been a lighthouse to you or to myself, to other people, how we are that to others.
Right.
So,
I found it really hopeful. Like if I can speak frankly, Jose, I can admit that I can get a little I can feel a little defeated actually, especially I read the same news as everybody else and I sometimes spend too much time on social media, although I'm trying to stop. And I can just feel I can feel a bit hopeless and powerless. And one of the things that when we've read other books, you're talking about like how can I maybe recognize a bias and how can I be nicer to a stranger. But I will be honest and say sometimes I feel like it does it do any good, right? And so I think that with this book, one of the things that I found very hopeful was this idea that like you change the world by maybe smiling at somebody in a parking lot or by giving somebody a book or by paying a little bit of attention to them. And that's so empowering. And I see that Michelle has just popped up. So we're going to bring Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi. Hi,
Good to see
Jose.
you.
hi, Michelle.
How are you? Sorry about that. I was having all kinds of technical difficulties.
No,
Had to change laptops.
We're so glad you could join us. And also, you look so beautiful. I love your jewelry.
Oh, thank you.
So we just started giving a very brief kind of overview of the book, like just really, so do you want to jump in and offer some kind of like, for, again, people who haven't read it, what is, Jose sort of described the lighthouse, but like, what is the book? What did you get out of it?
So, first, I didn't realize that it had a lot of Christian connotations. So I apologize for anyone who may have been offended because it was heavily rooted in Christianity. But I thought this was for me, showing up as my whole self as a Christian woman. This was an amazing book, and the metaphor of the Lighthouse was really helpful to me. And it really was a guide for me on how I should live my life. And um, it it the lighthouses in my life are important, but I think it's more important that I live my life to be a lighthouse for someone else. That's what I got out of the book. I also love right from the beginning when he talked about um, how many there are 22,900 lighthouses across the world, and no two are exactly alike. And I thought about how many millions of people are in this world. Even twins are not exactly alike. And how each one of us brings something to the table to make a difference in somebody else's life. And when he just talked about everything that a lighthouse does, and most of them are not functioning lighthouses anymore. But I thought about, I went to Aruba for my birthday, and one of the historic places or landmarks is this lighthouse in Aruba. And it's on a lot of the tours that you take, and the importance of this lighthouse for that community. And I just thought about the significance of that. And in some cases, we may be lighthouses and don't even know it. So I absolutely love this book. I recommend it. My son is starting a new business. He's wants to be he's embarking on becoming a life coach. And I said, I think you need to read this because there's so many little nuggets in this book. So this is one I'm going to buy. I use the electronic version. And I'm really mad because I had to highlight it, but I don't get to keep it. So.
I bent down all my pages again, Michelle. I like to do this to the librarians just to make them cringe, but it's not a library book. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, I did the same thing you did. I downloaded. I used the app as well for my library system. But one of the things that I think it's interesting that your point of view in terms of that you said that it was kind of you saw more of the religious aspect of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I did not even concentrate or did not even thought about the religious aspect of the book. I think I was so um, I guess more amazed by the stories that he was telling, especially the when he was in school, when he actually needed a place to go,
Mm-hmm.
and he just provided that the counselor's name, and then the counselor was accepted him. So I was kind of more uh, you know into the stories or the how his life was impacted, and the things that he went through when he was younger and what he has become now.
Yeah.
And so, but it was interesting that you mentioned that the Christian piece or the religion piece. That I mean, it's that did not even cross my mind.
Okay. And see, I guess because I'm also a minister, so I look for or receive sermons from everywhere.
Mhm.
And there were so many sermons, and I had to stop myself saying, I'm reading this for PGC MLS, but I was taking notes for other things. So you mentioned his story, and his story was amazing. But then when he meets his uncle and
Mm-hmm.
his real family, that was just, I mean, heart wrenching. And the other thing is when he saw the picture of himself in his folder, but he didn't
Yeah.
think it was him. He said, "Oh, they stuck some other little boy's picture in my file. I have to give this back." And then realized he had never seen a picture of himself as a child.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I just can't imagine to live in the world and to have not seen a picture of yourself, but then have so much to give to others.
Mhm.
Um, he faced so many hardships, or as he likens it, to storms, and to still be a lighthouse to somebody. I just absolutely love this book. I really did.
Yeah. I was just saying, just when you popped up, that how empowering I found it. And in that sense of like, on, and so just if you can bear me repeating myself for a sec, it was just that how hopeless I can feel. And I assume I'm not alone. Sometimes reading the news or every day reading the news,
Mhm.
that things are so awful and I feel like I don't have any control over them. And so I can feel really disheartened. And so like there's a few things I could do. Like when we were in the office, I made a point of going to everyone's cubicle or office and saying good morning when I came to the office. It was just like a little thing, but it was like, that's something I can do. I can take 90 seconds and say good morning to everybody.
Mhm.
Um, but really there's feeling like I don't think that I'm not looking for compliments or that. I'm assuming my coworkers didn't notice or didn't care. Like it just that you do things and so you do these things and you think, do I even make a? Does it even matter? And then I thought what this book did such an amazing job of doing was showing you that like literally smiling at somebody makes a
Mhm.
difference because you never know what somebody's journey is. And I love this part in the book where it talks about someone's outside does not show you anything
Right.
about the path that they are on or that they have come through. And
Mhm.
although I think we know, like we hear that, and he says it there, don't judge a book by its cover, but we all do.
Mhm.
If you see somebody who looks a certain kind of way, and I think particularly somebody who maybe looks very put together, we may imagine that everything's great for them, but
Mhm.
they could be, and one of the things points he makes is that person could be in the middle of their own
Mhm.
storm. And I love this idea that you can be in the middle of your own storm
Mhm.
and you can still be a lighthouse for somebody else. And
Mhm.
I mean, to me, I just found it so hopeful and it's basically exactly what I needed to read. So thank you, Steve Pemberton.
So the other thing is, so one of the things, Jose, I don't know if Kyla shared this with you or not, but we wanted to go on this journey of healing, because we talked about, we've talked about all of the social equity, social injustices, racism, everything that we endured for the last few years. And um, we've not necessarily talked about the healing. And most people have gone through some kind of trauma. I just got back from PLA. It was in Portland, Oregon. The homelessness or people experiencing homelessness was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, tent cities set up on sidewalks. They've defunded the police. Lots of the um, business owners are living with the fact that they can't do anything about someone who may have set up a tent in front of their business, um, preventing people from entering their establishment. Um, they talked about, if a crime did not cost the person more than $750, the police are not going to show up. The Unless someone's murdered, they're really not going to show up. And so, um, just the what they're experiencing there. We had a program, policing in the libraries, and the staff in the Portland Library really want police in their library. Someone said to me, "I just got head butted by a customer," and some of us were talking about what we're seeing in public libraries, and people are coming in and they're experiencing trauma, and they don't know what to do with that trauma, and they become angry and they're taking it out on others. And I said, because many of us are not embarking on the journey to healing, what has happened over the last couple of years. And most of us are not equipped to counsel. But what this book says is we all have something in us to be light for somebody else. And we've just got to go out and be a force of good in this world. And we can do that, whether it's through our personal trauma or storms, whether it is just simply sharing what we've been through because others have been through it. The book talks about Holly Robinson Pete's son, who is autistic, and how he has just become a lighthouse to other children with autism, as well as their parents. Because when they told the story about the father, I think it was the father who nobody had ever said anything good about his child, um, and what her son stands for now, and how the Dodgers can't wait until he enters the facility. And I thought how wonderful it is to think that there may be people out there who wait because of how we shine, in whatever way it is, whether it's walking through everybody's cubicle and saying good morning or whatever it is we do. But there may be somebody who is waiting to see us smile, somebody who is waiting to hear someone else say good morning to them, or somebody who's just simply watching you and whatever it is that you're doing for them that particular day. We just go about our way, and it doesn't have to be that we're setting out to be something amazing that day. You just never know if you just go out and just be good. And he says something about, and I'm gonna have to find it because I have so many highlights in this book, but to live your life in a way that is empathetic, compassionate. He said something about just being good, to understand that other people have storms and trauma, and to give people grace. I'm going to have to, because I just read it to a staff member who sometimes, and she may be listening, but who sometimes can be mean. And I told her, listen to this. I love her dearly, but you know, there are times when, if you get in, as people say, get in her crawl, she's gonna hold on to that anger. And I read passages to her over lunch. I was like, just listen to this, just listen to this. So I don't know. This book was, like you said, it was really, it gave me hope. It really did.
Yeah, and I think you just mentioned the I think his name is Jr. from and so you know that just example is not necessarily that you have to be in a certain social status to, or you know, to just be a lighthouse for somebody, because even the players, right, you know, they have millions of dollars, they're professional baseball players, and they were just waiting for him to just come to the club, and you know, that would, he was uplifting them, their spirit. So I think you mentioned earlier, it's just, we are so many people here that, you know, that we can be that lighthouse for somebody in some minimal way. But you know, like Kyla mentioned, also, you know, just a good morning probably, um, you know, even if people don't want to hear it, I mean, that's a positive thing early in the morning. So, but it's, yeah.
I was thinking those two parts. I mean, those, I actually, as you can see, I'm sorry, I have to show it again. Not to upset anybody. Don't get upset. All you librarians, look away really quick. But the point in all of this is that that's how many places I basically just want to read the entire book out loud, because every page I was like, oh, I have to underline this. I need to make a note of this. I want to talk about this. And I have the same thing where I want to give it to everybody that I know. So everybody stay tuned. You know what you're all getting for Christmas. Okay. But one of the things that I was struck by, and of course I closed this to make my point about all the places I had I wanted to read to you, and of course I lost it. But he doesn't shy away from some difficult things. And so I'm just going to read a passage, because at least for me, this really is true for me. Unfortunately, we live in a time of unprecedented toxicity. Civility seems to have faded away, and the common denominator of many interactions is rooted in rage, anger, rudeness, and shaming. Hatred has been steadily on the rise. Unlike generations past, we have been more on the alert for things that invade our. We have to be, more on the alert for things that invade our spirits, whether that be the news we digest or the relationships we have. Defining the sanctuaries that protects us matters. And so he goes on to talk about things that you can do to protect your, like, and it's not anger. It's a very loving book, but we need to protect ourselves from the negativity. And one of the things that what I liked about that passage is it addresses the fact that, you know, look at how so many of us, even if we don't write this way on social media, what you see on social media, the zingers, the one-liners, the nastiness, the racial commentary, that, like it just goes. I mean, it is just endless. Like if you go on Twitter, I promise you, you see something, and whether you see something that you're like, yeah, that's right, yeah, I agree, ha ha ha, and what does it actually do for? I mean, I just know for myself. There's so many times I'll see somebody make a zinger, and it's like it's an opinion I agree with. I'll be honest, I agree with it, and I'm like, yeah, but what's my actual spirit? It's not happy.
Mm-mm.
I maybe feel like I scored, or that this person scored a point for my side, but my soul isn't warm. It's not open. I'm not generous. I'm not kind. It's like I got to celebrate a gotcha moment to somebody else, and so he addresses that this is that we're all here, and that we have to. Well, not have to. Sometimes what we have to do, but this encouragement to protect our own selves and create space that is free from that hostility. And I guess I've said this before to Michelle and Jose, you maybe have heard me say it, but I've come to realize that in my own journey that I've been quick to notice when other people are wrong and other people's hatred, like those people are bad. And then recognizing in myself that I've maybe cultivated dislike or judgment of the other. And so maybe in my case, it might be people who I presume don't vote like me, let's say, and all of this judgment that I might have, that I might imagine that they must think, without having talked to them, just having made that decision. And so trying to, again, Michelle and I talk a lot about biases. So we're trying to recognize that I have biases, and I can feed those biases with people who think like me. And on one hand, it feels good, but on the other hand, it's building that community he's talking about, the community of shaming and hatred and divisiveness. And so I love that he addressed that, and then also provided some remedy for us just as individuals. And I don't know, I found it very healing and hopeful.
Mm-hmm. I also like the fact that he addresses that sometimes we don't say yes enough.
Mm-hmm.
When we make mistakes or something doesn't go our way, we see it as failure. And he even addresses doubts. And so one of the things that I actually highlighted, Paula, because sometimes Kyla, sometimes I doubt myself. And I highlighted, did your doubt stem from an opinion or criticism? A message from childhood that you've held on to? A time when a setback was broadcast publicly? Or is it a private struggle? And this is whatever the experience, admitting that we harbor such feelings can be difficult. We are afraid to show our vulnerability or are uncertain where to turn for solutions. Suffering in silence, struggling to find a way forward, we find ourselves locked in a perpetual cycle of uncertainty. And he's actually talking about one of the people in the book. He says this was the place John found himself in when he, who had been a lighthouse to so many others, needed one of his own. So sometimes we get into our mess and we're still looking for a lighthouse. And so even when we're working to be lighthouses for others, there are things that may trigger. We may hear something, someone, like you said, somebody may say something that triggers something from childhood. It causes us to doubt ourselves. And so even though we are working toward being lighthouses, we also have to continue to look for the lighthouses to inspire us.
Yeah, to me, that's an interesting point, because I honestly don't think that we as a people, we think ourselves as a lighthouse, right? We don't. I don't think we go out there every morning thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a lighthouse for somebody."
Right.
So, what we as personally think is, probably the problems that we're going through, the concerns that we're going through, but not recognizing that even throughout that, even while we are struggling with our own problems, our own issues, there's certain things that we might do that could, reflect to somebody else that that we're doing something positive, but we're not self aware of that.
Right. We don't see our own impact.
Yes.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And that was another part that I found hopeful, though, which is that, and I think it reminded me that for all of us, there's somebody out there, like Jose, there's somebody out there that might not even know your name, but remembers a kindness that you did, that remembers you. And that's already happened. Like, you don't need to do something different than you've already done. You've already done that. And that you will continue to do it. And I think the book points that out, that it doesn't have to be enormous things. And sometimes it is, right? Sometimes it is enormous things. Sometimes you take somebody into your home as an example, his life, but sometimes it is like, again, giving somebody a book or a ride in a storm, like a literal, like literally like a ride. Someone's walking down the street and it's pouring rain. You're like, you need a lift. Like, they're going to remember that
without regard of your life.
Well, I'm Canadian, so I'm just going to leave that there. I mean, I'll let you, I'm not, you make your own safety assessment, but I just mean,
we know about you, Kyla.
Okay, don't necessarily do what Kyla does, but I am just trying to make a point that there are things that we've all already done. And for those of you listening, and I think this is important because I just assume that people feel the way that we do here, which is we can feel hopeless, we can feel bitter, we can feel insecure, or like we're not good. And I assume that's true for people listening too. And so just the book does such a good job of reminding you, as Michelle's saying, you can take action to be a lighthouse for people. And also that you have already done that by your presence and your neighborliness, and I think that is what I found. It's definitely a very healing book for our time. I'll say that.
Right. And I think that one of the reasons I love the job that I have is, and have always loved being in libraries, is because every day we have that opportunity to be a lighthouse for someone. We librarians and the staff who work in libraries change lives every day. We hear stories all the time. A woman came in, she was experiencing homelessness, and the staff there helped her find housing. They pointed her in the right direction, and she took the time to write back to say that she no longer lives in Prince George's County, but she has found housing and she's living in the DC area, but it was because of that staff who helped her. We hear stories all the time about how someone came in, didn't know how to use a computer. Not only did we teach them how to use a computer, but helped them write a resume, and they were able to find a job. And sometimes it has nothing to do with library work. And one of the stories that I'm going to share is about a young man who used to come in the library every day. And when I worked in another library system, and this young man was in high school, and it was clear that he probably had either attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. And he would always get in trouble. And so finally, I had to put him out because he was just bad. And I had almost 200 kids that came in my library every day, and at one time. And so his parent called me, and it was, I thought it was his parent at the time, and asked if he could come in and talk to me because his son really needed to be in the library. Anyway, so I met with him because I often acted as principal. So me and the security guard met with this parent, and what I learned in that discussion is this young man was a foster child, and this parent turns to him and he says, "See, the state didn't want you. Nobody wants you. Not even the library wants you." And I stopped the meeting, and I put my hands on the table, and I said to the young man, I no longer looked at this man, and I looked at him and I said, nobody gets to define you. I said, what is in you, God put in you. I said, and only God gets to define you. I said, and you have choices to make. I said, so here's what I'm going to do. You're going to get to come back in this library. But when you come back in this library, you belong to me. I said, and I'm going to treat you just as I treat my children. I said, and when you are here, you're going to have to listen to me. So he came in for a long while. And sometimes when I would see that he was getting a little hyper, then I'd give him a task. Come on, I need you to come back here and cut up some of these paper to make scrap papers for me. I would give him stuff to do. Anyway, after a while, I no longer saw him, and I assumed he, probably went to a new family. Years went by, and he came in the library right before I left and came to Prince George's County, and he was with this girl, and the girl was pregnant, and he introduces this girl. He said, "This is my aunt." So I'm looking in his face, and I do recognize his face, and I don't remember his name. I just said, "Oh, hi, baby, how are you?" And he said, "This is my aunt." He said, "I used to work here." He said, "She's the manager here." He said, "I used to work here." Um, he said, "And when I worked here," he said, "she was tough. She made me wipe tables off. She had me cutting up paper for the librarians." He said, "Boy, she worked me hard." And he went on to tell me about this was his girlfriend, and um, how they didn't have any place to live right now, but they were looking for a place. And he just thought of the library, and how if I was still here, he knew I would help him. And, and I was leaving. I only had like 2 more days. So I introduced him to another staff member who wasn't there when he used to come in. And I said, whatever he wants. I said, if his library card is not in good standing, fix it. I said, just help him get what he needs. And he said to me, he said that I'll never forget what you did for me. And he said, telling the story again about this job he had at the library. And when I think about it, I guess he did think I was giving him a job. And at the time, I was just thinking, I want to keep him safe. I don't want him, I want him to feel like he is loved by somebody. And, every day he came in, he would come around, "Where's Miss Michelle?" And then it was, um, uh, "What you need me to do today?" And sometimes I would give him a little bit of money and let him go across the street to get a snack. Did you eat? Did you, whatever. So it had nothing to do with library services, but everything to do with making him feel loved. So, um, that's why I love what I do. And is you make a difference in somebody's life every day. And that is really rewarding for me. To be able to say that, you know what, I'm making a difference somehow, some way to somebody. And not every job gives you that opportunity. You don't
Mhm.
get to interact with people like that and make a difference every day. And I just feel like, this is just public services is just a great field to be in, to make a difference.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there are other, I mean, social services is probably the same way. Um, and I know that there are probably people that are worn out every day, um, from what they see in some of the clients. And but think about the folks who really, really need the services. And there's that social worker who goes above and beyond to make sure they have what they need. Um, just like the social worker in the story that Pemberton tells about trying to find a house for him on Christmas Eve. It's just, to be able to do that and make a difference. And you may not ever see those people again. It's just
Yeah.
so rewarding.
That is true, but even I know you just mentioned that not every job give you the opportunity, but probably maybe every job give you opportunity to actually assist somebody, right?
Mhm.
That I mean, I think we as people that work for the government that provide certain service has more opportunity to provide more to assist other people. But even if you don't have a job that have that direct interaction with people, whatever you do in your job with your supervisor, your coworker, that also could give you the opportunity or provide you the opportunity to kind of impact somehow, some way their life, depending on certain actions that you do. So yeah, so I think that everybody I think at the beginning you mentioned that the book mentioned that there's 22,000 lighthouse in the
Mm-hmm.
world, something like that. But I would argue that there's, I don't know this exact number, but I'm sure that is close to 7 billion people in the world that are,
Mm-hmm.
lighthouse out
Mhm.
there in some way somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that this book actually made me think was when I was reading it is I wasn't even thinking about me how I was a lighthouse to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That did not cross my mind, but I was just thinking how people in my life had been a lighthouse to me,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and so that was one thing that I think it was very interesting for me in this book is that I wasn't kind of thinking myself, yeah, I've been this to this people to somebody. It was just going back, thinking about high school, thinking about work, and how people have been that to me. So it makes
Mm-hmm.
you think.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It does. This, I'm telling you, this, I'm definitely buying the book. There's just so much in it. And I think no matter what you're going through, no matter where you are in life, whether it's a good time, whether you're in a good sweet spot right now, or whether you're down in the dumps, there's something still that will spark something in you. Whether it's, okay, how can I be a lighthouse? Or just like you said, Jose, to remind you of who the lighthouses are in your life. Kyla, we have, I don't know if you remember, but I'm sure you met Monique and in the office. And Monique is one of those people. If you walk by, she's going to say good morning, good afternoon. She's going to speak no matter what. And she absolutely hated when we entered the pandemic and we closed our office doors.
Mhm.
She would love to sit up front, look out in the hallway, and anytime anybody walked by, good morning, hello, and she'd call you by name, and she's yelling out in the hallway. And some of the people, because if she, you could walk down the hall one way, but if you're coming back, she's still gonna say hello. Some of the people would be frustrated, but there were some people who came by that door, and they needed to hear a good
Mhm.
morning from Monique.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, my office happens to be one of those offices that people still stop in. And Monique loves it. It's not as much foot traffic as it used to be, but she absolutely loves it. And she has the biggest smile and the heartiest laugh. And sometimes they say she's too loud in the office, but one of the things that I know for certain is that somebody needs to hear her smile, needs to hear her laugh,
Mhm.
needs to just hear her say good morning to them. It's, I am, it may not even seem like much to some people now, but there may be a time in their life when they look back, like you said, just look back over your life and think about, well, who was that lighthouse to you? And, they may be saying, wow, I remember walking down that hallway and I could get a good
Mhm.
morning from Monique.
Mhm.
You just said that. I'm sure that Kyla will remember this too, or know about. It's that there was a person in the not in the office, not in our office, but outside in that same building that that every time that she would see somebody, it was that good morning.
Mhm.
And like Monique, it could be annoying to some people, right? But there was other people, the other somebody else that probably um, were very happy just to hear that good morning. So yeah,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
your story just reminded me of that person that actually worked in the same building that we worked. And it was just, you knew in the morning you were entering the building and you heard the good morning.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
even if you were not even looking at that person, you just heard the good morning. You just know who was saying it. So
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just thought of a story and I'm compelled to tell it. I'll probably regret it later. So
tell it.
okay, here we go.
You won't regret it.
So it's just I was just thinking about this the how you can be experiencing one thing and somebody else experiences something else. So in order to do this, we have to go way, 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 way back in time. We're going to go back to 2007. And I think so I have a high school education. I'm a single mom to two children. I was unemployed for a long time because I'd moved to a new city. And I think at this point I'd found a temporary job making like $10 an hour, 4 hours a day. And of course I was like totally grateful for it. and I'd shaved my head, so I was cue ball bald, and I was wearing rainbow slippers, as one does when one is driving around in Nama, British Columbia. Because, like, what? Hold on. I mean, like, wouldn't you wear these around? I mean, come on. Okay, so I'm wearing these slippers, and
Have you had those since 1970?
No, did I say 2007? Did I say 1970? I wasn't alive in 1970.
Okay.
I wasn't born yet.
I heard 2007, but you just took it way back, Michelle.
I did wash them. I'm just gonna go on record. Okay, hold on. It's getting awkward over here. Okay, anyway, so I'm bald, cue ball bald, because why not? And I wear my rainbow slippers, and I have my youngest daughter, I think, is in second grade, and I have a lot of anxiety about the school because I don't have any money. So, like, they would need $7 for a planner. I didn't have $7, you guys. It was horrible when they would, oh my God, I'm gonna start crying. It was like so horrible when they would ask for $7 for the school planner because I didn't have it. And so it's just like such a stressful time. And I remember driving down the road and it was raining. And I see this guy walking down the road with a suitcase. And it's pouring rain. And I'm like, as I drive by him, I'm like, oh my God, that's my kid's principal. And my brother I'm blaming my brother. I'm going to throw my brother on the bus right now. My brother had been visiting. So there was like pop cans in the front of my car because he didn't clean them up. But also neither did I. So I'll throw myself. So I've got empty pop cans, totally bald. I'm wearing slippers. And I see my kid's principal, who I've never spoken to ever because I like want nothing to do with the school, like walking in the rain with a suitcase. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. And I was stopping my car in the middle of the road and I get out and I'm like, do you need a ride? And you can imagine being this man and being like, am I going to get murdered? So you could sort of see him trying to decide if he was going to be murdered or not. And then he was like, yeah, a ride would be great. So he gets in my car and there's like the pop cans rolling against his feet and everything. And he sits there hunched in this passenger seat. And I take him. I'm like, I'm Anya's mom. And I take him to his house. And what happened after that is he went up to Anya, who also, we don't need to unpack all of this, but we had some family, struggles, and she's pretty, stressed out little kid. And he goes up to her at school the next week and he goes, hey, your mom rescued me. And Anya felt so special that she had been sort of chosen. And then he started kind of like offering her opportunities to do things. And he offered me opportunities like volunteer at the PTA and like ran a school newspaper club and did all these different things. So for me, this moment of like, I mean, if I was going to talk to my children's principal, I would have like cleaned the house. I would have made something with eggplant. I mean, come on. I'm not going to like stop with my slippers on and like crack cans. It was such a scary moment. And from that, I think a lot of beauty came in terms of my children's relationship to the elementary school. And I have always thought there was this really, for me, frankly, a really beautiful outcome. And then some number of years later, I was talking to him and I said something about, I was just so glad that I stopped that day. And he said, I was having such a bad day because I came in on the ferry and my family hadn't come to pick me up. So I was walking home and my family wasn't there. And then you stopped. And it had never occurred to me in all those years that it was also nice for him that some random fat bald woman with slippers stopped and gave him a ride. Like, because as we've been talking about, I think you can be so much in your own chaos. And I know how much this moment, which was very scary, it sounds silly now, but it was very scary for me to stop and like let the principal in my messy car. It had never occurred to me that it was also meaningful for this other person. And so so first of all, I so apologize for getting teary on the air, everybody, but that's live theater. That's what happens.
Yeah, it wasn't
but I was just, as you were talking about your story with the person in the library, and I was just so struck by these things that we do, maybe where we know that we're taking somebody under our wing. Like I'm sure the principal realized he was taking bringing Anya in. Mm-hmm. But we don't always, and Jose was saying, we don't always get to see those glimpses where we've made a difference for somebody else. And so that was a thing that was transformed our lives. But as it turned out, this person like literally walking through a storm and there was a story there that I didn't know, and I don't know. It was
Yeah, but kind of, I think, I mean, this story, I think it is very, uh, you know, touching as in the way, because that's we know Kyla, and we know that that's the personality, right?
Mhm.
But imagine that was back in 2007 when you mentioned this thing occur, but now, just bring it back to society, right? Just a society as a whole, how society has changed somehow,
mhm,
that instead of we being going to take it back to this lighthouse, that with the light, so bright, so because of things that are happening in society, that we have become somehow afraid to be that lighthouse too, right? So we
mhm,
try to kind of, instead of being that lighthouse, we try to hide
mhm.
of being that, because of how sometimes, just bring it back into society and how times has changed. But there's still a lot of people that actually, still pushing forward, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Sorry
I
to
love
that moment, but I thought like it was good to just make a connection with
Yeah.
how society
Yeah.
has changed with 2007, when you mentioned you did something like that, to what people might think now
Right.
doing certain actions.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
This that reminds me of some of the chapter titles are really right on point too. It's so this is the Lighthouse Effect: Possibilities over Circumstances, and this is they're talking about JR, and it says here, where is it? Okay. Wherever you see a lighthouse, the sound of a pounding surf is always nearby. At Wind Point Lighthouse in Wisconsin, the roar of Lake Michigan is just a few yards away, welcoming visitors with unapologetic ferocity. Wave after wave punishes the enormous boulders that have been placed there to form a seawall. It is then that you begin to get a sense of the power of the waves, their relentless force, smashing into the rocks, mocking their attempt to stop them, as if they know that the stones will eventually wear down. You begin to see what the lighthouse is up against, the endless swells that will not compromise or negotiate. In that world, all you can see are circumstances. It says, then it goes on to it's talking about RJ and his family and their circumstances. But we have to learn, it says, the same scenario happens in many of our daily lives. Circumstances that aren't of our making, presenting us with challenges for which we are not prepared. They can be as small as car trouble or far more significant, such as the loss of a job. But we've got to get above our circumstances to be that lighthouse. And
mhm.
that's essentially what you said you were doing. You had no money, you were in this car called Kala, and you somehow determined that this man has to be safe, or if he isn't, I'm going to die trying to help him. So,
I think I just felt I'd feel guilty if I kept driving. Yeah, I may have been selfishly motivated, but it was such a nice symmetry. And I think I do want to talk about one. Let me just say this first of all. It is time for questions. So if you are watching and you have a question for us, please type it in the chat. Miss Vivian, I do see that you have a question, and I'm going to come to it in just a second. I just want to talk about one quick thing first, and we'll go to your question about the books in the Elephant series. One of the things he talks about, and I think it's critical, which is this idea of being an encourager, and recognizing that to have courage and to encourage is this, encourage maybe is courage from somebody else, and and how critical it is to be an encourager. And I was thinking about how often it's very easy to tell people why something isn't going to work, or why this, and you can have reasons why you do. Oh, I don't want you to get hurt. Oh, I don't want you to be disappointed. But what if instead we faced people when they came to us like, I really wanted to, you were just like, that sounds awesome.
mm-hmm,
Like, what if that was our 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 response?
mm-hmm.
Jose says, he really wants to become a professional skydiver, and I don't know, Jose. I'm just giving you something, and the response, instead of being like, "Well, that sounds pretty scary," is, what if the response is, "That sounds amazing. How can I support you?" And I thought that this book, he's got a whole, under F.L. Kirby, the chapter about F.L. Kirby that talks about just this encouragement. I mean, courage is not only about finding bravery for ourselves; it is also about helping others find theirs.
Mm-hmm.
There is a word for this, encourage, which means to make strong or hearten. The very nature of this definition means that courage is not focused on you, but rather what you can offer others. So I love, I wish we could all be encouragers, and it made me want to be more encouraging, of like more, just if anybody has a dream or a thought, that what I give them is like, that sounds awesome. How can I support that? But that's all I need to say.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to just say, Miss Vivian has a question about how many books are there about the elephant we don't see. So if you're asking how many books are there, so the elephant we don't see is the name of our cool series. Michelle came up with the name because it's talking about the elephant we don't see, like the elephant in the room that we avoid. And so the books that we have read a lot of books in this series. We're on year 3. And this year we're doing 6 this year. We're only doing it for 6 months. We're doing 3 months, taking a couple month break, and then doing another 3 months in the fall. But I could, Miss Vivian, you could let me know in the chat if you'd like me to send you a list of all the books we've ever done. I'd be happy to do that. I can tell you that next month we're reading this, The Opposite of Hate by Sally Cohn. And then we're taking a little break for a couple months.
One of the things so we spent the last couple of years really focusing on many isms and social justice and all of the unrest. So all of the trauma. And we wanted to essentially pivot and try to focus on helping us heal, to deal with the trauma in a positive way. And one of the things that, so there's a subtopic in the book called The Power of the Pivot. And it says a different vantage point gives us new information. And with that information, we can begin to change our approach. And if we just take a look at all of the things that we've read, all of the books that we've discussed, and take in that information and be better, will make a huge difference in this world. And, I know that we don't have thousands and thousands of people listening to us, but just one person, Miss Vivian, listening to us, your dad listening to us, maybe they can share and we can continue. This will grow because the word of mouth is the best advertisement. And I just think that as long as at least one person hears us and we can make a difference in somebody's life, they too can do the same thing. So, we've all got to pivot. At some point, we've got to pivot. Yeah. And live on the information that, act on the information that we receive. Positive information. Yeah.
Yeah, that I do agree with you in terms of, even one person, two or three, I think it's good that person one can become like 10 later on, especially if there's information that you two are providing the opportunity to discuss, right? Opportunity to discuss some topics that probably a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do it or not even thinking about. We just go throughout days without thinking what's going on in society. How is that related to me? And so I guess this is just a different avenue that that you provide the opportunity to people to learn a little bit more about what's going on. So.
Yeah.
There's a part in this about grace, which is, I think, in the same section where he was talking about the negativity that we're all living under right now and how difficult that is. And it truly is very difficult, I think, for all of us. So you needed grace once upon a time. When we judge someone, that opinion falls into one of two areas. In the first instance, instance, we form an opinion based on what we think is their personality. For example, we've determined the person who just cut us off in traffic is an aggressive personality and drives that way all the time. In the second instance, our opinion about a person is based on something in their situation at that particular time. We believe the driver who cut us off might just be running late for work. It is not hard to guess which of these judgments we often make, those focused on personality. It could be that it's much easier to say, I know exactly what this person is like because I've seen this personality before. What helps us navigate moments like these and to show grace is to remember a time when we needed understanding or empathy. We've all had bad days and tough moments. And in those moments, what we needed was not to be judged, but rather to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was another reminder.
That's the passage I read to somebody today.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. That's the passage. I mean, because I think for so often things can feel like they're happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think we're self-centered, and we are. I mean, I don't think we are, in fact, self-centered, and not as a critical. I don't mean that as a critical. I mean, but this is the only world we know is the world inside our head and what our senses make sense of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if somebody snaps at me, it's because they don't like me. It's not because they're having a bad day or, oh gosh, are you okay? It feels personal, and so this reminder to be like, hey, to have that open-hearted empathy. I thought it was so timely. Certainly what I needed to read.
Yeah. As a book, I recommend it. And like I said, I borrowed it. I actually borrowed it twice because when you borrow the electronic copy, you only have it for 10 days, I think.
21 days.
Is it 21 days? I
Yes.
can't remember. And I work in the library, but because I got it right away and I made all my notes in it the first time I borrowed it, and then it disappeared. I didn't time it right, so then I had to go back, borrow it again so I could make all my notes. And it's also an easy read, I think, and I was able to read it on a plane ride to Portland and from Portland home, and just like I said, it's so many nuggets. I took lots of notes. And there's something in it, I think, for everybody.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I highly recommend this book.
I think this book to me is like, if you decide to watch a show and you get into the end of the first episode and then they leave you hanging there. You want to read another,
Mm-hmm.
or you want to see a different episode, the next episode. So I think that's how I was. That's what I would say about this book is that you start reading and you just want to keep reading it just to kind of see the other stories and
Mm-hmm.
and how it relates to you or other people. So
Yeah.
So I have the misfortune once again of telling everybody that we're out of time. But it has been, so this really was a wonderful book. And I have to say, even though I say this every time, even though we're not a review show, it is really great. And I definitely recommend, if you haven't read it yet, to read it. You can get it from your favorite independent bookstore. You can also get it, of course, from our friends, pgcmls.info. The Prince George's County Memorial Library System is celebrating their 75th anniversary this year, and the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. So we're delighted to share in some anniversary celebrations with our friends, the library. We thank all of you for tuning in tonight and invite you to join us for some upcoming events we have. Tomorrow night, we are having a legal panel to discuss the book, A Question of Freedom by William Thomas III. This is a book that takes place about freedom suits. These are legal actions fighting slavery that happen in Prince George's County. This book is completely amazing, and the library and us and some other event partners, Joe's Movement Emporium and Prince George's County Center for Performing Arts, are co-hosting a bunch of events. And tomorrow night at 7, we are having a virtual legal panel with Judge Sean Wallace and Attorney Gabriel Christian with Renee Battlebrooks from the Office of Human Rights to talk about the legal repercussions of these freedom suits, what they mean for the nation, what they meant for slavery, and what they mean for Prince George's County today. So we invite you to join us in that. And on Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m., also virtually with our friends, the library, we are hosting a Women in Faith Diverse Voices Speak event looking at finding hope in difficult times. So a timely event for this week that we hope that you can join us at. Again, thank you everybody for being here. Jose, thank you so much for being our very special partner.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Michelle.
Don't forget, Hyattsville opens tomorrow officially. The Hyattsville branch.
Yes, 10 o'clock. You can go in person and join the party, right?
Yeah.
You have the address off the top of your head, Michelle?
I'm sorry?
Do you have the address off the top of your head? Okay, Google. Well, Google.
Hyattsville,
10 o'clock. Okay. All right. All right. Good night, everybody.
410 Eastway Highway.
All right. There you go. Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Good night.